Welcome back to those of you watching on YouTube to Oh and Another Thing. Your host, Vince Patrone. Our producer, Bertram Beans, is with us in the house today. Welcome back. We have a great pod for you. We're going to talk all about Donald Trump's golf trips, why we're not upset about the golf. We here at Oh and Another Thing love to hit the links, get the sticks out, and knock a few balls around on the back nine, all right? We love to do it more than anyone. We played high school golf. Golf and baseball, those are my two sports. I was not one for physical activity, I guess you could say. Throw me in a weight room to throw some weights around, but if you throw me on a track, I'm not running laps. That's always been my motto. I am not doing laps. I don't want to run. So, baseball, you have to run the outfield a little bit. Not too much running. Golf, there's no running, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the podcast. But before we get too off track here, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about what happened in Central Park yesterday. Really interesting, scary, goofy, funny, weird thing to talk about from Central Park yesterday. And, of course, some headlines for you. So let's dive on in with those. Hopefully this last we'll talk about it. At least 5.5 million coronavirus infections have been reported around the world. More than 1.6 million of them here in the United States, where the death toll is now nearing 100,000. The New York Times did a really good job illustrating that on their Sunday cover. I hope they do something like that again this weekend. I know they only posted 1,000 of the names. I originally thought it was all the names. I mistweeted. Oh, speaking of mistakes I've made, since we're talking YouTube now, if you were watching last week and if you were a first-time watcher, I have a big apology for you. I left the levels too high on the editing during the video portion, so it sounded awful. So if you didn't watch any of last week's episode, I do not blame you. It sounded terrible. So apologies for that. We won't let that happen again. Anyway, back to the headlines. Back to what matters. So, again, the New York Times did a really good job illustrating on Sunday how many people have died. I mistweeted, said that they put everybody in the paper, they only put 1,000. I think that they should do that every week until they're out of names to publish. I think there's, again, close to 100,000 people dead. Obviously, you can't post all of them. We have a president who hasn't really allowed us to have a national moment to grieve. There hasn't really been a chance. Not even just his fault, really. There just hasn't been a national moment to grieve because of how... Well, no. Mostly because of him. Mostly because every time there seems to be maybe a small chance for it gets rained on or something dumb or shitty happens to it. Or maybe glass breaks in the background. But we'll digress from that. So it's nice that the New York Times did that. Hopefully they can do it again this weekend and next weekend. And at some point they'll run out of names to publish. But I think that's a nice in memoriam. And if you're not in that first 1,000, you got to feel, not that the dead can complain or anything, but you got to feel a little left out, right? You know, you died, you're dead from the coronavirus, and you didn't make the first 1,000 names. At least you can hopefully make the next list. So hopefully there is a chance to honor or remember everybody who died from coronavirus, not just some of them. So we'll see what they do going forward with that. Back to some headlines here. The stock exchange is partially reopened. Its trading floor on Tuesday, I'm reading from the Washington Post here. More than 2 months after it was forced to shift to all electronic trades because of the pandemic. Markets are up a little bit today, probably because of that. They are up today. I'm saying that's what it's because of. We'll see if that lasts. The ripple effects of the pandemic are likely to cause meat shortages to worsen as the virus spreads through America's meat packing plants. Sorry if that was clumsy. The cases keep going up in some places, despite all of the footage we saw this weekend of people in swimming pools and out at lakes and enjoying their Memorial Day weekend how they normally would. We all saw the footage. That being said, cases are still on the rise in a lot of places, and there's still a lot of trouble in the meat packing plants, despite efforts by these companies like Tyson and Purdue and other meat packing companies to, keep their workers as safe as possible. But maybe we're seeing that there is no way to keep these meat packing workers safe in this situation, being that I feel like they work on a stock line. I feel like there's probably a line there. And it might just not be a necessity right now. Maybe, and I know it's going to be hard for a lot of people, and it might cause an outrage. maybe some people would come up with some kind of allergy they have to vegetables. But maybe we could just shut down the meat packing plants for a couple of weeks. Get the meat we have out there. We know there's places that they had to throw away some produce, some dairy products. We saw it right at the start of this coronavirus pandemic lockdown, shelter in place that were in that farm upstate in New York dumped, I think it was it's a huge amount of milk, just a ton of milk down this drain. You could watch it flowing out of this pipe on this video. And I'm sure that's not untrue for the meat industry, too. They're saying there's shortages, so maybe I'm wrong there. But I'm not going to say I'm wrong here. Maybe we should close those plants down for a couple of weeks. I know there'll be outrage. I know people will say, oh, I need my meat. But maybe you don't need your meat for a couple of weeks. Shut them down. Pay the workers. Obviously, give them hazard pay. That way you don't have to worry about them infecting each other, and you can slow the spread in those plants, because that's where you're seeing a lot of cases coming from now. Anyway, on to the other stuff for us on O. And another thing, and we'll start with Trump's weekend. Well, we'll talk about just the weekend in general. It's not unusual for presidents to play golf. Not unusual at all, and I don't care at all. I don't have a problem with presidents playing golf while they're in office. I think it's pretty cool that presidents have something that they can do. Presidents should be allowed to have physical activity. I wouldn't want to be locked at my employer, locked in the room at my work all day long and not allowed to do anything else at some point. I mean, he has to live in the White House. So the president should be allowed to leave and exercise however he wants. Maybe not whenever he wants, but however he wants. So it's not about him going golfing. And I think it's a good way for some people to get exercise. We'll talk more about that, but specifically people that tend to be the president's age. So even if he has gone golfing more than any other president, which he has, and you can find that at, I linked it on the Medium page. There's a website that keeps track of all the president's golf trips. I pulled up. President Golf Tracker. Thank you. So the Presidential Golf Tracker has a list of every president who's gone golfing. It has how many times they've gone golfing, and it has a top 5 here. The top 5 is... Do you want to guess on the top 5?
Top 5 what?
Golf trips for presidents. Who's golfed the most?
Maybe HW?
HW comes in 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah. Allegedly only 24 rounds, 3 per year. They say he gave up golf, though, during the Iraq War. He's quoted as saying he wouldn't want to be seen by, like, a grieving mother or a widow out playing golf during the war. So, like, good on, like, shout out to George being a warmonger. But also shout out to him understanding the optics of him playing golf. Obama, number 2, with 333 rounds. And then Trump coming in at number 1.
How many rounds did he have?
You know, it has him at only 136 rounds, but it has him up here. Like, it has him listed at number 1.
Maybe it's based on cost.
I think it might be maybe. Maybe it's off cost.
Obama played at public courses or something.
Oh, projected per year average is 87. Okay, so if you look at the per year average, 87 compared to 42. Yeah, so he had more time to play golf, so that makes sense. All right, so on the pace Trump is going, he would play more golf than Obama, and already has played more golf than Obama up to this point in his presidency. I saw that somewhere too. But then Eisenhower and Woodrow Wilson. That doesn't matter, but it's a fun little thing to know that Woodrow Wilson and Eisenhower are in the top 5 of who played the most golf. And you wouldn't think about that from Eisenhower, but then again, maybe. I digress. So we don't really care that the president has golfed this much either. We'd rather he not be, but it's okay. And we're only slightly bothered by the cost of his trips. It's fine that it costs about $134 million for the president to go golfing up to this point. That's how much money he has spent on between travel to courses to play, which have all been his own courses, and lodging for him, Secret Service, staff members, himself, obviously, I don't know if he has to pay, but he charges $650 a night to his Secret Service to stay. I don't know how many Secret Service members he takes with him when he goes golfing, but he does take a good crew of people with him everywhere he goes. He is the president. That kind of comes with being president, so every time he goes, these people have to be housed, and he charges them. and it's at about $134 million on the taxpayer at that point. And remember, it's worth noting here, we can't get mad at him spending $134 million of taxpayer money on golf trips and weekend outings to New Jersey and to... Where's Mar-a-Lago at? So wherever it's at in Florida. It's not about that. Because remember, he doesn't take his salary. And it's the least this billionaire president could do is sacrifice that nice salary he would get for all of us. In exchange for a nice little golf outing here or there. We can go, throw a few million around for a Secret Service or throw a few million around on the course to figure out what he's doing. We don't have a problem with him going golfing. And it makes it even cooler. Oh, and another thing. It makes it even cooler that the president does this because he does it at his own courses. That's right. He doesn't take a salary. He doesn't go to... It's not like he's going to, Augusta National. It's not like he's going to Pebble Beach. It's not like he's going to... I can't think of any other golf courses right now. If this was about 4 years ago, I probably could have ran off a list of 6 right there. Just bang, bang, bang. TPC Sawgrass. Nope, that's a tournament, but at Sawgrass. So, okay, that's another course. Bethpage. That's out in Long Island. You guys aren't here to listen to me name golf courses, so we're going to move on from that. But he's not doing that. He's just going to his own courses. He's going to his own places. So that means that every time taxpayer money is spent at one of his golf courses, or every time a Secret Service member pays for a room, be it on his own or via taxpayer money, however they do it, all that money, it just goes back to the president. So why is that a problem? It's just money to the president that we pay him in a different way. It's almost as if we're funneling taxpayer money into his properties without him having to get any kind of a bailout for his failing properties. It's almost as if he's using the presidency to prop up all of his failing golf courses, which I think should be totally cool with all of us, right? I hope the sarcasm's reading in this. Is the sarcasm reading in this?
I think so.
Thank you. All right. So it's hard to get mad at the president because, like he said, he needs to get exercise, and especially hard to get mad at him for golfing right now during these trying times. I know he's drawing some heat right now from the lamestream media about his golf trips, especially golfing this weekend on Memorial Day. But you can't blame him for it. A beautiful weekend like this, you guys realize how nice it was this weekend? Not to go golfing? It's a meaningless weekend anyway. We're only remembering people who have lost their lives serving the country anyway. We're only, remembering that 100,000 people have died nearly from a virus over the course of 3 months. It's a meaningless day. What do you want him to do? Go to a VFW? You want him to go to the hospital and go have him visit nurses? He can't do any of that anyway. He's not allowed to because of the virus, remember? He's not allowed to go places. He's only allowed to play golf. And remember, he can't do anything else because of the virus. He can only play golf. He can't go to an aircraft carrier. He can't go to a military base. That would require him to wear a mask, and he can't wear a mask. He'd look like a little baby. Besides, he needs his exercise. And you can't beat the exercise you get driving a golf cart up to a ball, taking a couple of practice hacks, then hitting your ball, kibitzing with your friends for a little bit, then going through the whole process again. It's great exercise. You can't beat it, especially whenever you're driving a cart. It doesn't matter that he has an entire gym at the White House, which, if you go to, I don't know where I sourced this picture from, but there's a lot of really great pictures on the internet of George Bush working out. George Bush apparently was a workout. I don't know why we're talking so much about Bush today, but George Bush was a workout fiend, it turns out. He would bench press in the White House. He would lift weights right on a treadmill. He'd go for jogs around the Oval Office, do marathon, not the Oval Office, around the grounds. He would run in marathons. Really active dude, and there's a lot of really funny pictures of him doing it. I don't know why. It's just something funny about George Bush sweating it out on a weight machine. That's kind of comical. But anyway, he has all of that at his disposal. But again, golf is what he needs. That's the exercise the man needs. Besides, with all the death and turmoil in the lives of the American people, the president probably needed some time to go clear his head and get his mind straight on the issues facing the nation. That's what people do when they golf off. And that's why executives like to golf. They say they think about business, think about the larger issues, what's facing them. How can they fix the big problems? How can they confront what really needs confronted? Things like what happened to Joe Scarborough and that staffer 20 years ago, Stacey Abrams and her weight, Hillary Clinton, what a nasty old skank she is, and of course Nancy Pelosi's makeup. Totally normal things for the president to worry about while playing 18 holes of golf during a pandemic. The president has a lot on his mind lately. The last thing he can keep worrying about is the, again, nearly 100,000 dead from the coronavirus and their families that haven't been allowed to grieve traditionally. He can't be bothered to worry about what happens to the 40 million on unemployment or what more we could do to actively find a cure for the virus with the rest of the world. Is he supposed to be thinking about developing a national strategy that leads to safe reopening while minimizing a second wave that is destined to hit this fall? Again, he has bigger things to worry about. And we know what he was worried about. This is the annoying thing about it. And this is where I do really have a problem. And I hope you guys caught all the sarcasm in that. I hope that read as sarcastically as I wanted it to. I'm not very good at reading off a script yet, but we'll get there. Anyway, the president, we know what he was thinking about whenever he was golfing over the weekend because he tweeted about it. And that was like the dead giveaway to it all. We know that whenever he was golfing, and it would be one thing if he was golfing and he didn't immediately get on Twitter and start tweeting about Joe Scarborough in a case that's been closed for 20 years about a staffer who had gotten to the office early. This is the sick thing about it. This 28-year-old girl that Trump was saying Joe Scarborough murdered, had a heart arrhythmia, and she just died suddenly one morning in the office. She got in early, and they walked in, and they found her dead, and Joe Scarborough was never really accused of anything, and it's insane that Trump would do this to, one, bring back the hurt and turmoil for that family. Imagine getting that phone call for that mother that day, and then having to relive it all because the president wanted to talk about it in a way for him to belittle the work of somebody on television. Like, just think about that. Anyway, he has bigger things on his mind, so we can't blame him for going golfing, and we shouldn't be too mad about it. Anyway, we'll digress from that because there are other things going on, and we have one concern. Well, a lot of concerns. We're always concerned here on OWN and everything. So you already know the story. If you don't already, just open Facebook or Twitter this morning. I'm sure it's there about Amy Cooper, the white lady who was walking her dog in the Central Park Bramble, as it's called, apparently set aside for bird watchers to come relax and watch birds. I think I've taken pictures there before. I'm not sure, though. Sometimes when you go to Central Park, you just kind of end up somewhere in Central Park. If you stay on the, so if you go to Central Park, you can go in and you can, stay on the roads, stay on the sidewalks that are pretty straight and narrow that take you on a general path, and usually, depending which way you go, you're headed uptown or you're headed downtown. You end up on 110th, or what's it start on? What's the park start at? Anyway, wherever the park starts at. So if you stay on the main stretch, you can go pretty much anywhere pretty easily. But if you get off to some of the little side areas, you can get a little bit, where am I? So I don't know if I've ever been to the Bramble. I think I have. We did take pictures one time in this really nice, quiet location that it seemed like there weren't any dogs, which maybe that was on purpose, but who knows. Anyway, Amy Cooper is out walking her dog, and then Christian Cooper, no relation. How wild is that? Yeah, two Coopers who hardly know each other. Can you imagine? It's the classic.
I didn't realize they were both Coopers.
Yeah.
I saw Christian Cooper was trending too. I was like, maybe that's the dog.
No. That's. Did we ever find out the dog's name? I didn't look into it. I'm going to talk about it. Yeah, it does. Well, actually, fun ripple for you. Don't look too deep because I have a good ripple for you. No relation. That classic joke. Two Coopers walk into a bramble. Anyway, so Christian Cooper was spending his Memorial Day trying to birdwatch in the park, and he had to ask Amy Cooper, again, no relation, to put her dog on its leash. No dogs off leash in the Bramble, possibly period. Again, I'm not familiar with the rules of the Bramble. Henry Bramble. No, Henry Cooper. Henry Cooper. Okay. So where we pick up in the footage is when, and you can find all the footage online. If you just, I'm sure if you go look up Amy Cooper, or look up White Lady or White Jogger or Central Park or Christian Cooper or Dog Off Leash or, boy, what are some other hot YouTube tags I could use for this? Anyway, you can search it. You can find it anywhere. But what we're going to pick up is where she has already refused for some reason to put her dog on the leash, which she has, by the way. She has a leash the whole time. You can see it, but she still refuses to put the dog on the leash. Then she starts threatening to call the cops. Now, bear in mind that at this point, she is dragging this dog around by the collar. And I mean, really yanking at him. And at this point, she says, I'm going to tell them, the fuzz, that there is an African-American man here, and he is threatening my life. A thing, to point out, the man was not doing. Worth pointing out here also, Miss Cooper so eloquently put it, Christian Cooper is an African-American man. However, we would have had no way of knowing that from the video, as we never see Christian Cooper in the video. All we hear is Miss Cooper's description of Christian Cooper, an African-American man, threatening my life. Now, there is no doubt that a savvy woman like Miss Cooper, who runs an Instagram account for her former dog, what's his name? Henry?
Yes.
Formerly Henry Cooper. More on that in a bit. Certainly does not keep her head in a bush, if you will. If you spend any time on the internet, you know, or you have seen at some point, come across a video of the consequences black men face when they run into the police or have them unjustly called on them. Miss Cooper knew what she was doing. She had intention of getting members of the NYPD down there to see what they would do to this man who had the audacity to ask her to follow park rules like everyone else. That's the only reason that she would go out of her way to say it was an African-American man threatening her life, because she knows that those are the buzzwords for the police to come down there, and that will work for her as a white woman. That is the go-to play. There's an African-American man here, and I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man here. That way they come down, because I know what happens to them. What a wild way to live your life. What a wild, fucked up way to live. Just to be asked to show a common courtesy to those in the park there to watch birds and enjoy their own day, and then you're going to threaten them with something that historically leads people to being killed at times, at least injured badly, oftentimes killed. I am sure Miss Cooper didn't take her dog out on a walk expecting to become a pariah in the lead story at the Times today, but I bet Christian Cooper didn't leave his home and expect to have his life threatened either. Now back to the footage. At this point, the dog is now struggling for air. What perfect timing! How about this? Okay, talk about. Wow. Okay, so at this point, the dog is now struggling for air. He is making that sound dogs make when they are hurt and squirming. You know the sound, you hear the sound, and your heart is breaking. Bear in mind, she's holding the dog now a little bit off the ground because he's kicking, trying to get his feet so he's not getting strangled by the collar that she's like pulling him up by. The police finally answer, and she files her complaint or incident or whatever, and the last thing you hear her say is, he's African-American. We are in the ramble at Central Park, and an African-American man is threatening me and my dog. After a few cries to the call woman on the phone, she demands, send the police immediately. Christian Cooper luckily walked away unscathed. Now there has been fallout. Luckily, there's been fallout for Miss Cooper from this. That old bat is on leave from Franklin Templeton, where she worked. I'm not sure if it's paid or not, but they have said that she is not allowed to work right now or is not working right now. Her dog walker, listen to this, her dog walker gave her up to the internet. Yeah, how shitty do you have to be to your dog walker that the dog walker is the person who essentially gives you up to the internet to literally be slaughtered? Says a lot to the kind of employer you probably are. And for her dog, for Henry, who you can see she is strangling in that video. Luckily for Henry, he has been taken back by the agency she rescued it from. Henry was quoted saying about his time with Miss Cooper, "If that was a rescue, let me die next time." Bert wrote that one. tough Bert. He wrote that one. And then he also said, "Is there any fights I can sign myself up for?" Hey. Anyway, for today, things are in the right place. But I do have my worries for this as the story goes on and as the week develops. Right now, it is creating a dialogue about the dangers that calling the police on black people can pose to those black people, especially when it is unwarranted, where it should be, exactly where the conversation should be. Though, we see this time and time again, and we shame them on Twitter, and still nothing happens for a few days. Christian Cooper was not threatening Amy and her former dog. In fact, he had dog treats in his pocket so that way he can diffuse these kinds of situations, as he was quoted within the Times today. However, what Amy really felt, possibly for the first time in her life, was someone asking her to follow a rule that would help someone else enjoy their day more, which applies to something else that has me worried also. Yesterday, Joe Biden and Donald Trump both went to memorials for Memorial Day. Biden wore a mask and Trump did not. Now, you might be wondering why these two things are connected, and we're going to get to that here. A day's worth of shit takes from the right-wing Twitter and from rich lib Twitter led us to a doozy of a Terry Moran tweet this morning. And I wanted to put a joke here about Terry Moran formerly being a really great world news correspondent until he himself turned cold after coming in runner-up to host The Bachelor. It's not true. I don't know if Terry Moran wanted to host The Bachelor or not. I just really like the premise of it all. Anyway, so Terry Moran tweeted this morning a now notorious picture of Joe Biden wearing his mask, you know the picture, and asking, "Do you think this is a good look for the President of the United States or a bad look for the President of the United States?" As if it's some kind of a fashion take, as if it's some kind of a does making you wear a mask look like a weak leader kind of situation. I don't know what he was getting at there. Maybe he was just poking the flames or trying to poll the people, trying to get the viewers' response, which really opened up a bad door for him. I don't think he wanted to open up this door of just getting absolutely dunked on left and right from Twitter. But it also really perfectly encapsulates how things can get watered down, how big important things become trivialized and downplayed or turned into a choice that can be easily mocked. Like the masks, for example. The masks aren't about how they look. What a really stupid fucking thing for a supposed journalist to say. It's not about if he looks presidential or not. It's about that he's doing the right thing. The right thing is to wear a mask. It's not about how it looks. These masks are for personal protection. Cuomo talks about it every day. Every time, well, not every day, but a lot of times whenever Cuomo has his press conference in the morning, he talks about it. Well, yeah, he does talk about it every day. Okay. He talks about how frontline workers and hospital workers and first responders have a lower infection rate than regular citizens. And evidence points to it being because they have followed every precaution. Because they have to, because they work with it every day. So they have heightened diligence. They sanitize, they wash, they wear masks, they wear gloves, they do all of it. So they have a lower infection rate. Things, including masks, have helped them lower their infection rate. Think of it like this. Masks are the new elbow of the face. When you cough or sneezed before, hopefully it was into something. Now that something is just attached right to your face. Is it to stop you from spewing germs? Absolutely it is. Should you still cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze if you're wearing a mask? Trivia question for the day. Leave it in the comments. Absolutely you should. Now, it shouldn't be a partisan choice. This shouldn't be wearing something that literally acts as a shield from your germs to the outside world. should not be a partisan choice. It should not be, should we do this? Will this make us look like we're scared or whatever the spin is? It shouldn't be that. It should be about being part of a society, about doing things for each other that make us all feel comfortable to do things outside a personal story. We went for a walk the other day. We saw most people wearing masks. We saw most people doing distancing. However, every time we're out for a walk and we run into one person, two people, a group of people, maybe one's not wearing a mask, maybe the rest are, guess what we still have to do? We still have to go to the other side of the street because we can't trust that other person. Not because we're worried that other person is going to physically harm us. Well, actually a little bit, because we're worried that person might spew their germs on us and give us the coronavirus or give us anything else. It's a hyper-realized society we're living in right now, so a lot of people feel uncomfortable to do things that they used to really enjoy doing, because we can't trust that everybody is going to do the right thing when the right thing is to do something as simple as wear masks. That way you're not spewing germs everywhere. We're walking down the street the other day, 43rd Street, and we're walking in this construction worker, I don't know what he was, comes around the corner, mask down around his neck, that's another thing, coughs directly into the street. I don't think we got touched by it. It's been a couple days now, we feel fine. But this is what we're saying. We're talking about living in a society here, doing things that help each other. But it's too late for masks now. Not to wear them. We can still wear masks. We can still wear masks, and masks can still be effective. However, it is too late to make it a nonpartisan issue. It's become a partisan choice issue, and we know who to blame. It has been the subject of every local news station's sound off, where they post will you wear a mask? Should the president wear a mask? Should governors wear a mask? Should it be up to shopping establishments to tell you to wear a mask? Sound off in the comments. Let us know down below. It shouldn't be that. It should be, because when you give it to people as a question, well, what do you think about this? Well, how do you feel about wearing a mask? It makes it seem as if these people have a choice. And granted, yes, the CDC did leave them room to make it you have a choice. However, it really isn't a choice whenever the rest of society is doing it, and you're in the minority of people. I know, Vince, you're making it sound like, if everybody walked off a bridge, I'd have to walk off a bridge. That's not what I'm saying. Don't be stupid. Don't be totally idiotic about this, okay? Masks and walking off bridges are different. Masks and carrying guns are different. That's another false argument that you're hearing from the right is, well, if we all have to wear masks, why don't we all have to carry guns? You're an idiot. You're a blackout idiot. There's so many differences between masks and guns. One is that guns shoot bullets that kill people. Masks do not. In fact, masks stop things from flying around that could kill people. So maybe, stop false equivocating all the goddamn time. Okay. What they should be saying on the news instead of, or should be tweeting from these news stations or putting on their Facebook pages, KDKA does this and it drives me nuts. I've been talking about it more lately, but what they should be saying is not, how do you feel about this, but here's how you can do this. Instead of, will you wear a mask, make it, do you know how to wear a mask? We show you tonight at 6. Shit like that. That's how you do things. But instead, everything is a subject of peer review now. Well, what do the viewers think? What do the folks at home have to say about this? And we do it with everything. And my worry is it will happen with this story too, with the story of the woman, of the white lady jogger in Central Park, accusing to call the police to come down and hopefully her hopes, not ours, do something to that black man. For today, the conversation about what Miss Cooper did or was trying to do, the way she tried to use her white privilege to get, again, to possibly get that man killed or at least beaten badly because she was asked to follow the same rules, is the story. But tomorrow it will probably be, should dogs be on leashes? Because that's how things go. Every time you have an issue that is so common sense, so when the question should be, Should you call the police every time you see something happening? Or does such and such require you calling the police? Is it threatening to be recorded? You're going to start getting all of these stupid, false equivalencies asked about this situation, trying to justify what Amy Cooper did whenever there is no justifying what she did. And I can see the tweets now, and I can see the Facebook statuses now. Sound off below if you think that Amy Cooper was being threatened by the man with the video camera. Would you feel threatened if someone told you to put your dog on a leash? I got mad last week because I was on Twitter and I saw KDKA ask about people tearing down Confederate statues in Tennessee. What the fuck do the people of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania have to say about people tearing down Confederate statues in Tennessee, and why the hell are you asking them? Can I ask, that's a fair question to ask. It doesn't matter what the people of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania think about what's happening in Kentucky unless you're trying to open up a chat room for alt-right white supremacists. That's what that kind of shit does, and that's what any of these survey says questions on Twitter from these news sources does, especially if it's a local news account. And that's a disservice to the people that follow that local news account, because then it warps their view of what's happening. It's not... News organizations and news sources shouldn't be asking what people think about the scenario. They should just be reporting it. It's fine. It's super lazy reporting. Super lazy. And then, you know what else it is? It's a way to heat check. It's a way to see what do people think about this so we know how to cover it. Do we want to cover it so people... Yeah, okay, so let's say... Anyway, so let's say like 70% of people think that Miss Cooper was treated unfairly by Christian Cooper. Let's say. I reckon that news organization would start covering the story to fit that scope for their viewers. That way their viewers continue to turn in. It's a way to heat check and figure out what the people think so you can retain the viewership, and that is not how news is done. That is not fair. That is not balanced. That is not journalism. And anybody who does that is not doing journalism, is not a journalist, and it's not a news organization anymore. It is a shell, possibly a profit company, who knows? Because the shame in local news is that a lot of these local newspapers and organizations are being sold to larger conglomerate companies. And it makes it sound conspiracy theorist when you say that, but it gets sold to, like, I don't know, I can't think of any of the names of these people right now. But they get sold to these companies that are pretty right-leaning, like, not Clear Channel. Who owns all the local news companies? I'm Googling it right now. We got a live Google happening for you. All right, we're pulling it up here. Sinclair. That's it. Those bastards at Sinclair. Okay, sorry. A little live Googling on the pod for you guys today. So Sinclair owns a lot of these, and Sinclair is a right-leaning broadcast company. They are famous for having, I don't know if you guys remember this, but they had a bunch of local news anchors right after Trump was elected read about fake news. They went out and they had to read this script about fake news and how they promised not to do any of that fake news garbage. Pretty much just using, parroting Trump talking points on local news for people that aren't expecting that and aren't used to that kind of coverage. And it happens more and more. It's increasing. Anyway, I digress. We need to stop covering things as opinion whenever there are a lot of things that are just fact and when a lot of things are just wrong. What Miss Cooper did was wrong. Calling the police on black people anytime just to do is wrong. If you see a real crime happening, please report it. But if you're borderline, don't do it. If you feel like you're being inconvenienced, don't do it. And that's all we have today for you here at O and Another Thing. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had as much fun as we did. We will be back on Friday with another great rendition, another great edition of O and Another Thing. You have made it this far. Please subscribe to us wherever you are listening. Please leave us a comment if you are listening. Share us. Tell your friends. Have a good rest of the week. We'll be back on Friday. Oh, and Another Thing.